The obsidian halls of the Vorak citadel of strategy hummed with the low-frequency vibrations of warship engines, the sound reverberating through the floating fortress like the growl of some great beast. The air smelled of ionized metal and the sharp, acrid scent of reptilian musk. Major Elias Carter adjusted his dress uniform's collar as he walked past towering Vorak honor guards, their scaled faces impassive, their clawed hands resting on plasma rifles. The human insignia on his shoulder seemed absurdly small compared to the battle crests adorning the aliens' armored chests. Late again, soft skin. General Krax's voice slithered from the shadows of the war room. The massive Vorak commander uncoiled from his observation throne, his emerald scales catching the holographic light of the tactical displays. His forked tongue flicked out in amusement as Carter saluted. Your species' lack of punctuality is predictable. Carter kept his expression neutral. Apologies, General. The gravity adjusters in my quarters were set for civilized species, interrupted Sub-Commander Vex, Krax's second in command. The younger Vorak's crest flared crimson with barely contained disdain. Perhaps if your kind had evolved proper musculature, minor discomforts wouldn't hinder you. The other Vorak officers around the circular war table hissed in laughter, their tails twitching in unison. Carter ignored them, focusing instead on the holographic battlefields flickering above the obsidian surface. Centuries of galactic conflicts, each one a masterpiece of Vorak military dominance. Krax gestured lazily toward a pile of datapads stacked carelessly in the corner. We've reviewed your so-called military archives, Major Amusing Reading. He flicked a claw, and a servitor drone scuttled forward, projecting a page from Sun Tzu's The Art of War into the air. All warfare is based on deception. Krax's laughter was a dry rasp. Cute. Do your warriors also recite poetry before battle? Vex snatched another text from the pile. Clausewitz on war. War is the continuation of politics by other means. He tossed it aside with a snort. As if politics and war should ever mix. Your primitive minds couldn't even separate governance from combat. Carter clenched his jaw but said nothing. The Vorak had spent weeks dissecting human history, reducing millennia of strategy to simplistic nonsense. They'd skimmed the texts like children flipping through picture books, missing the depth beneath the words. A new hologram flared to life. Earth, blue and vulnerable, surrounded by the jagged red icons of the Vorak invasion fleet. Our analysts have finished their assessment, Krax announced. Your homeworld will fall in 72 hours. The Zeperians have already placed bets on how quickly your leaders will beg for terms. Carter finally spoke. With respect, General. Those texts you dismissed. They're not just philosophy, they're manuals. Krax's slit pupils narrowed. For what? Your pitiful skirmishes over patches of dirt. We've seen your wars. Major tribes clashing with gunpowder. Nations bombing each other over ideology. You call that strategy? Vex tapped a claw on the table, summoning a recording of 8th century trench warfare. Look at this, waves of your kind marching into gunfire. No shields, no orbital support, just meat. His crest flared again. And you expect us to believe these scribbles hold any relevance against a galactic power? Carter stepped forward, ignoring the way the Vorak guards tensed. You're missing the point. Those scribbles are why we survived long enough to reach the stars. He pointed at the hologram of Earth. You see a weak target, we see 1,000 traps waiting to spring. Krax leaned in, his breath hot and rancid. Then by all means, Major, enlighten us. Explain how your children's fables will stop this. The hologram shifted, showing the Vorak dreadnought worldbreaker hovering over Mars, its planet-cracking cannons charging. Carter didn't flinch. You want a lesson? Fine, but you won't like the test. The war room fell silent. Even the servitor drones stilled. Vex was the first to break the tension. Eno, the simulation begins in 1 hour. Let's see how your manuals hold up against real warriors. As the Vorak commanders dispersed, Carter lingered, staring at the hologram of Earth. He tapped his comm. "Blake, they took the bait. Start phase 1. A chuckle crackled through the earpiece. Admiral Ryan Blake's voice was grimly amused. "Tell me, Elias, did they at least pretend to read the footnotes?" Carter smirked. They stopped at the pretty pictures. Outside the observation windows, the dying star pulsed red, casting long shadows across the war room. Shadows that, for the first time, seemed to cling a little too closely to the Vorak's flawless battle plans. The War College's holographic arena hummed to life, its massive dome flickering with the projected blueprints of Sol's system. Captain Lisa Hayes adjusted her uniform collar as the Vorak generals took their positions around the central display. Their scaled faces twisted in amusement as the simulation initialized. "Begin Scenario Alpha 7, announced High Strategist Vex, his forked tongue flicking against the command console. Standard orbital assault pattern. The holograms shimmered, resolving into hundreds of Vorak warships, their angular obsidian hulls bristling with plasma cannons. Against them, a pitiful cluster of human vessels appeared. The USN Defiance and USN Atlantica outnumbered 20-1. Among the observing Zephyrians, crystalline facets pulsed with smug violet light. Major Carter stood motionless beside Lisa. "They're not even trying," he muttered. Lisa smirked. "Wait for it." General Krax tapped a claw against the display. "Observe how swiftly their command structure collapses." The simulation advanced. Vorak ships unleashed opening volleys, and as predicted, the human fleet scattered in apparent panic. Pathetic. They break formation at first contact. One Zephyrian delegate floated closer, its telepathic voice dripping with condescension. "Your species clings to survival instincts. We calculate Fey surrender probability within Fey standard hours." Lisa's fingers danced across her datapad. "Override code Gamma. Echo loading human response package." The simulation stuttered. Where the human ships should have been fleeing toward Earth, they instead executed sharp, synchronized turns straight into the Vorak fleet's blind zones. Tiny dots that had seemed like debris flared to life, autonomous mining drones, slashing at Vorak engine nacelles with industrial lasers. "What is this?" Krax hissed, as 3 Vorak cruisers flickered red, marked as disabled. "Phase 2, Lisa said. The retreating civilian transport suddenly detonated, not with destructive force, but with swirling EMP bursts that crippled nearby Vorak sensors. The holographic projection glitched violently as the simulation struggled to process the unorthodox tactics. Impossible, the Zephyrian's facets flashed crimson. No civilized species would weaponize refugee vessels. Carter finally spoke. "Article Fey of the Galactic Conventions bans placing weapons on medical ships. Those were freighters." The simulation accelerated. Human ships that had seemed destroyed reactivated, having ejected their crews in life pods minutes earlier. The empty hulls now drifted into calculated positions, forming improvised minefields. Vorak capital ships attempting to pursue found themselves funneled into kill zones where Earth's hidden orbital defenses waited. High Strategist Vex's tail lashed. "Cease simulation. These parameters are invalid." Lisa crossed her arms. "Every maneuver is pulled from historical human battles. The false retreat at Chancellorsville, the dead ships at Salamis, that this violates all principles of honorable combat." The Zephyrian's psychic shout made several Vorak flinch. Captain Hayes leaned forward, tapping the display to replay the decisive moment. "Honor doesn't win wars, creativity does." The hologram zoomed in on the USN Atlantica, seemingly crippled, until it launched a spread of torpedoes through a drifting asteroid, bypassing the Vorak point defenses entirely. One younger Vorak tactical officer stared at the data. They used the rock as a firing tunnel." "Yup," Lisa said. "We call it banking the shot. Learned it from a game called Pool." The chamber fell silent, except for the Zephyrian's agitated crystalline humming. Major Carter picked up a discarded tablet, the same copy of the Fey stratagems Krax had mocked earlier. He flipped to a dog-eared page and read aloud, "When strong, appear weak. When near, appear far." You dismissed this as poetry. General Krax's claws unsheathed involuntarily. These are not battlefield tactics, they're tricks. Lisa smiled. Funny, that is exactly what the British said about American colonists. She entered another command, and the simulation reset, this time displaying a Vorak fleet burning in orbit around a now defenseless Earth. This was your predicted outcome. A second scenario appeared alongside it, the actual simulation results, with over Fae of the Vorak fleet destroyed or disabled. This is what happens when humans fight back. The Zephyrian delegates clustered together, their psychic whispers creating a tangible pressure in the air. The variables were accounted for. Their material inferiority is fact. Material, Carter agreed, but not imagination. He nodded to Lisa, who brought up a final display, an archive footage from Earth's history. Grainy images showed primitive rockets striking advanced fighter jets. Vietnam, 8th century, farmers with rifles defeating a superpower. Another clip, ragged militia outmaneuvering armored divisions. American Revolution, and here, enough. The lead Zephyrian's facets darkened to an angry indigo. These are anomalies. Lisa closed the files. To you, maybe to us Tuesday. She powered down the simulator. You wanted to study human warfare, but you only looked at our weapons, not our stories. As the stunned aliens processed this, Carter added quietly, "Run the simulation again sometime. I'll show you what happens when we get really creative." The chamber's doors hissed open as Professor Zixel arrived, her tentacles pausing mid-motion as she sensed the tension. "Am I interrupting?" "No, Professor," Lisa said, collecting her datapads. "Just giving our friends here a proper history lesson." The Zephyrian delegates remained motionless, their crystalline forms flickering with unreadable patterns. One finally pulsed a single hesitant thought toward the departing humans. "You teach this to your offspring." Carter didn't turn around. "We start with picture books." The doors closed behind him, leaving the War College in silence. The Vorak invasion fleet emerged from warp space in perfect formation, their obsidian hulls blotting out the stars. Admiral Ryan Blake watched from the bridge of the USN Defiance as the alien armada approached Mars. The Worldbreaker led the charge, its massive plasma cannons glowing with ominous energy. "All civilian ships, commence evacuation protocol," Blake ordered. His voice was calm, but his fingers tightened around the armrests of his command chair. On the view screen, hundreds of human transports scattered like frightened birds, their engines flaring as they fled toward the inner system. On the Worldbreaker's bridge, General Krax bared his fangs in satisfaction. "Just as predicted," he hissed to his tactical officer. Primates always run when faced with superior force. A junior Vorak lieutenant hesitated. "Sir, their retreat pattern seems coordinated." Krax dismissed the concern with a flick of his claw. "They have no discipline, no strategy. We've seen their so-called war manuals, children's stories with pretty pictures." He turned to the comms officer. "Order the 3rd and 4th wings to intercept those transports. Let the humans watch as we dismantle their pitiful fleet." Blake's lips curled into a grim smile as the Vorak ships broke formation, chasing the decoy civilian vessels. "They took the bait," he murmured. Captain Lisa Hayes, monitoring the tactical display from Mars Command, chimed in over the secure channel. "All mining drones in position, Admiral waiting for your signal." "Hold," Blake said. His eyes never left the screen as the Worldbreaker moved into high orbit, its weapons charging. "Let them get comfortable first." The Vorak ships herded the human transports toward Phobos, their weapons locked but not firing. Yet Krax wanted the humans to sweat, to beg to realize their inevitable defeat. "Now," Blake said softly. Space erupted. The civilian transports split open like metallic flowers, revealing swarms of autonomous mining drones. The Vorak had just enough time to register the deception before the drones detonated in synchronized EMP bursts. 3 capital ships went dark. Their systems fried. Krax roared in fury as emergency lights flickered on his bridge. What treachery is this? Before his crew could respond, the real trap sprang, The fleeing human ships, now revealed as heavily armed frigates, wheeled about and opened fire. At the same time, the Martian defense grid, silent until now, lit up like a festival. Railgun batteries hidden beneath the red sand unleashed hell. "Admiral, the Atlantica is in position," Hayes reported. Blake nodded. "Execute Phase 3. From the shadow of Saturn's rings, the USN Atlantica emerged at full burn, its stealth systems disengaging as it closed the distance. The Vorak scanners, still recovering from the EMP bursts, didn't detect the battleship until it was too late. The Atlantica's spinal, mounted plasma lance speared through the Worldbreaker's shields like a hot knife through butter. Secondary explosions rippled along the Dreadnought's flank as its engines failed. On the Defiance's bridge, Blake opened a channel to the crippled Vorak flagship. "General Krax," he said, his voice dripping with cold amusement. "You studied our history books. You should have read our fairy tales." Krax's scaled face twisted in confusion. "What nonsense is this?" Blake leaned forward. "The Trojan horse, the boy who cried wolf. Little Red Riding Hood." He let the words hang in the air. "We teach our children deception before they can walk, and you thought you could outsmart us." The Vorak general's rage turned to dawning horror as the realization struck him. This wasn't just a military defeat. It was a cultural miscalculation of galactic proportions. Outside, the remnants of the Vorak fleet burned amidst the wreckage of their own arrogance. The Martian defense grid continued its relentless barrage, while the Atlantica moved to finish off the Worldbreaker. Hayes's voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral, we're picking up surrender signals from the remaining Vorak ships." Blake exhaled slowly. "Tell them to power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded." He paused, then added with quiet satisfaction, "And inform Major Carter that his children's gambit worked perfectly." As the Vorak survivors were rounded up, a single thought echoed through the minds of every alien aboard the shattered fleet. They had come expecting to crush a primitive species. Instead, they had walked straight into a storybook, and humanity had written the ending. The Zeperian delegation had demanded access to Earth's historical archives after the first Vorak ships fell to human traps. Their crystalline forms pulsed with nervous energy as they floated through the vaults beneath Geneva, their telepathic probes scanning shelf after shelf of human literature. Dr. Naomi Petrov adjusted her glasses as she led them deeper into the restricted section. "You'll find our oldest strategic texts here," she said, her voice carefully neutral. A Zeperian analyst designated HFY extended a shimmering appendage toward a worn leather volume. "This is labeled Aesop's Fables," it pulsed, its psychic voice tinged with confusion. "A children's text." Naomi smiled, read the one about the wolf and the lamb. The crystalline beings clustered around the book as HFY translated the ancient tale. Their forms flickered violently when they reached the ending. "Any excuse will serve a tyrant." HFY's core flared crimson. This is a lesson on pretext for invasion." Naomi nodded, moving down the aisle. She pulled another volume from the shelf, Grimm's Fairy Tales. "Here, Hansel and Gretel. Notice how the children use deception against a superior foe." The Zeperians shuddered in unison, their psychic frequencies spiking. One of them drifted toward a display case containing an ancient Greek text. "This one is marked the Odyssey," it pulsed. "Another children's story?" Naomi's smile widened. "Oh, that is one of our oldest military manuals, the Trojan horse. That wasn't myth. It was standard doctrine for half our civilizations." HFY's crystalline structure actually cracked along one facet. You teach infiltration tactics to your young." A younger Zeperian, designated Y-Fay, had been silently scanning another shelf. Suddenly, its entire form blazed white-hot. "This section is labeled Nursery Rhymes," it pulsed, its voice trembling. "Rock, a bye baby. It describes decapitation strikes." Naomi chuckled. "Well, we do like our lullabies with a bit of free blind mice." Y-Fay interrupted, its panic vibrating through the chamber. "It is a manual for guerrilla warfare. The farmer's wife cuts off their tails with a carving knife." HFY turned its faceted gaze toward Naomi. Your species. You condition your offspring for war from infancy. Naomi shrugged. We call it cultural education. The Zephyrians huddled together, their crystalline forms dimming with dread. HFY extended a quivering appendage toward a final book, Sun Tzu's The Art of War, the same text the Vorak generals had mocked weeks earlier. Wait, HFY pulsed, its voice hollow. If this is what you give your children, what do you give your soldiers? Naomi's smile didn't reach her eyes. Oh, we don't give that to anyone, not even ourselves. The archive fell silent except for the faint hum of the Zephyrians' distressed energy fields. Somewhere in the distance, a Vorak transmission crackled over the comms, a desperate plea for reinforcements. HFY's voice was barely a whisper. We told the Vorak to study your military history, but we never thought to check your children's books. Naomi closed the volume in her hands with a soft thump. Now you know why we read to our kids before bed, she said. It is not just a story, it is training. The Zephyrians didn't respond. They just hovered there, pulsing faintly, as if trying to process the horror of a species that weaponized fairy tales outside. The first explosions of the Martian trap lit up the sky. The Vorak fleet descended upon Mars like a swarm of locusts, their obsidian hulls blotting out the stars. General Krax stood on the bridge of the Worldbreaker, his reptilian eyes gleaming with triumph. All according to projections, he hissed. Human defenses are collapsing. Their pitiful fleet is in full retreat. On the surface of Mars, Major Elias Carter watched the enemy ships fill the sky. His fingers danced across the holopad in front of him, inputting the final activation codes. Admiral Blake, he said into his comm. They've taken the bait. All units are in position. 1,000 kilometers above, Admiral Ryan Blake leaned forward in his command, chair aboard the USN Atlantica. His fleet hid in the shadow of Saturn's rings, engines cold, running silent. Hold, he murmured. Just a little longer. Below, the Vorak landing forces touched down in the red dust, their armored legions pouring out of dropships. They expected resistance. They expected panic. They did not expect silence. Then the mines detonated. The first explosion ripped through a Vorak battalion, the fusion blast vaporizing tanks and troops alike. Then another and another. The entire Martian surface erupted in fire, the synchronized detonations turning the planet into a killing field. General Krax's triumphant hiss died in his throat as the Worldbreaker's sensors screamed with warnings. What is this? On Mars, Carter activated the final sequence. Mars defense grid. Online. Hidden beneath the dust buried for decades, the planet's true defenses awoke. Railgun turrets rose from camouflaged bunkers. Missile silos yawned open. The Vorak fleet, hovering low in orbit, suddenly found themselves staring down the barrels of an entire planet's worth of guns. Fire, Carter said. The sky burned. Aboard the Worldbreaker. Alarms wailed as the ship shuddered under the barrage. Krax staggered, his claws digging into the command console. Evasive maneuvers get us out of. Admiral, Blake's comm officer said. The Vorak fleet is fully engaged. They're not looking behind them. Blake smiled. Then let's remind them, we're here, all ships, full thrusters, weapons free. The USN Atlantica and her sister ships roared out from Saturn's shadow, their engines flaring like newborn stars. The Vorak rearguard had just enough time to turn their sensors toward the sudden energy spike before the human fleet was upon them. Missiles streaked through the void. Railgun rounds punched through hulls. The Atlantica's main cannon lanced out, spearing the Worldbreaker's engines in a single, brutal strike. The Vorak flagship listed, its systems failing, its once proud silhouette now a crippled wreck. General Krax scrambled to his feet, his scales dull with shock. This is impossible. Our projections, our simulations, we're based on the wrong books. Carter's voice crackled over the Worldbreaker's comms. The human major's face appeared on the view screen, his expression calm, almost amused. You studied our history books. General, you should have read our fairy tales. Krax's frill flared in rage. What are you talking about? The Trojan horse, Carter said. David and Goliath. The art of war wasn't just philosophy for us. Neither were the stories we told our children. Every fable, every myth, they were lessons. And today, you learned one. The transmission cut out. Outside, the Worldbreaker's hull groaned as the Atlantica's weapons locked on for the killing blow. Blake's voice filled the bridge of the human flagship. All Vorak vessels, this is Admiral Ryan Blake of the United Earth Space Navy. Your flagship is disabled. Your fleet is surrounded. You have 1 minute to surrender, or we will reduce your ships to scrap. Silence. Then, one by one, the Vorak ships powered down their weapons. On Mars, Carter watched the enemy fleet capitulate. Around him, human soldiers emerged from hidden bunkers, their rifles still smoking. One of them, a young corporal, let out a disbelieving laugh. Holy hell, sir, did we just win? Carter clapped him on the shoulder. No, Corporal, we just taught. High above, the Zephyrian observers hovered in their crystalline ships, their telepathic networks buzzing with disbelief. One of them, a senior analyst, pulsed a single horrified thought to his peers. They turned their own children's stories into weapons. And then, worse, what else have we missed? Aboard the Atlantica, Admiral Blake leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. The bridge crew cheered around him, but his eyes were on the view screen. On the burning wreckage of the Vorak fleet, his comm officer turned to him. Orders, sir, Blake smiled. Send a message to Earth. Tell them the Vorak have just learned why humanity never needed a manual for war. He paused. And tell Major Carter he has earned himself a promotion. The battle was over. The lesson, however, was just beginning. The observation deck of the Galactic Federation's flagship was silent except for the faint hum of holographic projectors. The surviving Vorak commanders stood in shackles, their reptilian eyes darting between the screens, displaying human war films. Their scales, once gleaming with pride, now looked dull under the harsh lighting. Dr. Naomi Petrov adjusted the controls as Faye played across the main display. The Zephyrian delegates pulsed with nervous energy, their crystalline forms flickering like disturbed water. This is entertainment for your species, one of them asked, their telepathic voice trembling. Major Carter, now wearing the new insignia of a promoted officer, crossed his arms. Entertainment? No, this is education. The Vorak prisoners flinched as Leonidas roared on screen, his small force holding the line against impossible odds. One of the alien generals, Krax, hissed, You admire this. This is madness. Admiral Blake chuckled from his seat. To you, maybe to us, it is Tuesday. The Zephyrians huddled closer, their forms vibrating with distress. They had seen Star Wars earlier. The desperate last stands, the cunning traps, the underdogs winning against all odds. Now they watched the Iliad, the ancient tale of Troy, where deception and endurance broke an empire. One of the Zephyrians extended a trembling crystalline limb toward the screen. You revere these stories? You pass them down through generations. Dr. Petrov nodded. We tell them to our children. We make games out of them. The room went still. A Vorak commander, his tail twitching in agitation, finally spoke. You mean your young learn from these? Carter smirked. You thought our history books were bad. Those were just the boring versions, the real lessons. They're in the stories we tell at bedtime. The Zephyrians pulsed violently, their forms flashing bright with realization. One of them turned to the others, their voice barely a whisper. They don't study war, they breathe it. On screen, Achilles stormed the battlefield. Unstoppable, inevitable, the Vorak prisoners shifted uncomfortably. Blake leaned forward, his voice low. You came to our system thinking you understood us. You read our manuals, analyzed our tactics, but you missed the heart of it. The projection switched again, this time to an old Earth cartoon, the tortoise and the hare. The The Zeperians froze. Petrov smiled. Slow and steady wins the race. That's not just a lesson, that's a doctrine. Krax snarled, his fangs bared. You tricked us, Carter laughed. No, you tricked yourselves. You thought war had rules, that honor meant something in the void. But we grew up on stories where the smart survive, where the weak outthink the strong. The final clip played, an old human film, The Princess Bride. The scene where the hero outwits the giant by using his own strength against him. The Zeperians dimmed, their light fading as if in defeat. One of them turned to the Federation observers. You must ban these. You must stop them from spreading these weapons. Blake stood, his expression unreadable. Too late. The stories are already out there. The Vorak prisoners slumped. The Zeperians pulsed weakly, their confidence shattered. And in the corner, a young human ensign whispered to another, grinning. Told you they wouldn't see it coming. The obsidian halls of the Galactic War College had never been so silent. The Vorak delegation stood in shackles, their once proud scales dulled by defeat. Major Elias Carter, now Colonel Carter, walked past them without a glance, his boots clicking against the polished floor. The Federation Council watched from their hovering platforms, their expressions ranging from awe to terror. The holographic war table flickered to life, displaying the revised Galactic War Manual. The cover now bore a human insignia, a clenched fist wrapped in olive branches. Carter tapped the console, and the first page illuminated the room. War is deception, the opening line read. But humanity has mastered the art of turning deception into survival. General Krax, his once imposing frame now hunched, let out a hiss. This is madness. You expect us to teach lies to our warriors. Carter didn't smile. He didn't need to. We expect you to learn from your mistakes. You invaded Sol thinking you understood us. You didn't. He swiped the display forward, revealing a new chapter. Human folkloric warfare, lessons from myth to modernity. The Zeperian delegates pulsed with uneasy light. One floated closer, its crystalline form reflecting the holograms. You knew we would dismiss your texts as primitive. You wanted us to underestimate you. Of course we did, Carter said. Sun Do's first rule, all warfare is based on deception. You thought you were reading children's stories. You were reading our oldest battle plans. Admiral Blake's face appeared on the screen, his image transmitted from the bridge of the USN Atlantica. The Vorak fleet has surrendered unconditionally, he announced. Their remaining ships are being escorted to Pluto's orbit for disarmament. A murmur rippled through the council. No species had ever forced the Vorak to surrender, not until now. One of the younger Vorak officers, his scales still bright with youth, stepped forward. What happens to us now? Carter crossed his arms. That depends. Are you ready to learn? The room tensed. The Federation Council exchanged glances. Finally, the eldest Zeperian spoke, its voice a resonant chime. The Council has voted. Humanity will take charge of revising all military training protocols. Your methods will be studied, adapted. A Vorak general snarled. You would let these softskins dictate how we wage war. The Zeperian's light flared. Would you prefer to face them in battle again? The general fell silent. Carter turned back to the hologram, pulling up a new file. Lesson 1. The boy who cried wolf. He tapped the console, and the story unfolded in vivid detail. It's not just a children's tale. It's a warning about credibility in warfare. Lie too often, and no one believes you when it matters. He glanced at the Vorak. Sound familiar? The defeated generals stiffened. They had mocked human tactics. Now they were being schooled by them. One of the Zeperians pulsed again, this time with something like curiosity. Your entire culture is built around these lessons. Not just built around them, Carter said. We live them. Every human child grows up hearing stories about cunning heroes, impossible odds, and victory through wit. You thought they were entertainment, their training. Admiral Blake's voice cut back in. The The Vorak invasion fleet has been fully secured, all weapons systems disabled. A pause. Though I doubt they'll be trying this again. The council murmured in agreement. The Vorak delegation remained silent, their pride shattered. Carter closed the hologram. This isn't just about winning battles. It's about understanding why we win them. He looked at each alien species in turn. You banned our military exercises. You dismissed our history, but you never stopped to ask why we tell the stories we do. The eldest Superior floated closer. And why do you? Because, Carter said. We know the galaxy is dangerous, we've always known. So we prepare from the moment we're old enough to listen. The room fell silent again. The Vorak generals stared at the floor. The Superiors pulsed thoughtfully. The other species shifted, uneasy but resigned. Finally, the council speaker rose. The Federation recognizes humanity's unique expertise, effective immediately. All member species will adopt revised training protocols. Human advisors will oversee the transition. Carter nodded. Good. Then let's get started. He tapped the console one last time. The hologram shifted, displaying a single phrase in bold letters. Know your enemy. But first, know yourself. The Vorak general who had mocked Sun Tzu weeks ago let out a slow, defeated breath. We never stood a chance, did we? Carter didn't answer. He didn't need to. The Superior delegate pulsed softly. What do we do now? Now, Carter said. Now you read. He gestured to the stack of books in the corner, the same ones dead dismissed as primitive. Start with the art of war, then move on to the Odyssey, and when you're done with those, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn book, Grimm's Fairy Tales. The aliens stared at it like it was a live grenade. Carter finally allowed himself a smile. Next time, read beyond the picture books.